I'm Aaron Baker from PhoneDog.com, and it's part 2 of the Samsung Galaxy Mega 6.3 full video review. It's a big phone, but it's got some decent specs, including an 8 megapixel camera, 3,200 milliamp hour battery, and a gigantic 6.3 inch HD display. It's part 2 of the video review. Let's see if this device has what it takes. It's part 2 of a full video review of the Samsung Galaxy Mega 6.3. It's got a 6.3 inch display and this phone is gigantic. The video is not going to do it justice. I can't wrap my hands around this phone. As big as you thought the Galaxy Note 2 and the LG Optimus G Pro were, this thing is even bigger, hence the name Galaxy Mega. It's part 2 of the full video review, but before we start that, I want to give special thanks to our partners at Best Buy Mobile, because while they didn't give us this phone, they do hook us up with a lot of phones that we just give to you for free at PhoneDog.com. When you walk into Best Buy Mobile, you'll walk out working, so whether you get the iPhone 5 or the HTC One or the Galaxy S4, they'll help you walk out with all of your settings ready to go, your contacts imported, so you walk out the door and it's super easy. Thanks to the good boys and girls at Best Buy Mobile. Here we go into the Galaxy Mega 6.3 review, and a quick recap of specs will tell you that this device has a 1.7 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon CPU, a 6.3 inch display. So this thing really is a tablet with phone connectivity. It's an HD display that's 720 by 1280 in terms of pixels, so a 720p display here, 223 pixels per inch. So yes, it sounds like it's got an HD display, and it does. But keeping in mind this thing is 6.3 inches, it is a little bit pixelated in comparison to something like the HTC One or the Galaxy S4, which crams a ton of pixels into a little tiny package. It has an 8 megapixel camera on the back, 1080p HD recording as you'd expect, 3,200 milliamp hour battery, front-facing camera here, and then you've got 4G, or I should say HSPA Plus, which technically by AT&T standards is 4G. So 4G connectivity, 1.5 gigabytes of RAM in this device, but really the winner to me, Android 4.2.2 with TouchWiz. So from an Android version, it's running the latest version of Android, the same version that is running on the Samsung Galaxy S4. So maybe you're looking at the Galaxy S4 in your respective country, and you got this device available, and this one's a little bit cheaper maybe, whatever the case may be. This device does compete, even though from a specifications perspective, it does have some mid-range specs. I'm going to load into Quadrant Standard, and if you watched part 1, I hope you did, and if you didn't, I would highly suggest going back and taking a look at that. But what I really talked about for part of that video was how this thing compares to the Galaxy S4, because obviously that's Samsung's iconic device right now, and they have 47 different variants of it, but the Galaxy S4, the original, is their iconic device. And as keeping that in mind, I want to see how similar and how different this device is, because the Galaxy Mega is not an iconic brand by any stretch of the imagination. Galaxy S4 and Galaxy Note 2 are arguably the two most successful brands. So I talked a little bit about part 1, or in part 1 rather, about some of the differences between this device and the Galaxy S4, and you really do see it, not on the surface, but when you dig down a little bit into the menu, you do see some of the stuff in AirView and some of the smart features aren't available on this device, whereas they are on the Galaxy S4. So take a look at part 1. We'll talk more about that in part 2, but we'll talk about it in the camera as opposed to the settings, for example. So go back and have a look at that. Loading Quadrant Standard right now. One thing I will give this thing credit for, huge props, battery life. As you would expect, and very similar to the Galaxy Note 2, this thing has a huge 3,200 milliamp hour battery, and combined with the fact that this is not on LTE on AT&T, it does get very, very strong battery life all around. So it's a gigantic device. You may not be able to get it in your hands, but the battery is going to last forever and ever and ever. So if you're looking for a device with good battery life, this could be a unit for you. Also want to thank Negri Electronics. They're available at negrielectronics.com. You can actually buy this device, which that's where we got ours. So thanks to them for hooking us up with a unit. 6,817 over here on Quadrant Standard. So again, not as fast as the 12,000 scores we've seen from the One and from the Galaxy S4, but still respectable nonetheless. Now, I want to load up camera because, like I said, I talked about the Galaxy S4 differences / Galaxy Mega differences in part 1 between some of the system stuff, but I haven't talked about the camera just yet. Now, you're going to see a couple of different things here. For example, mode, very similar overall interface, but if you know the Galaxy S4, you know that you have the ability, for example, to add in the front-facing camera as well and use both simultaneously. You don't have that over here. What you do have is the ability to activate flash. You got your typical settings, as you can see, photo size, metering, ISO, and then I've got settings over here. And then I've got my modes also, but you are missing some of the modes that you get on the Galaxy S4. Night and sports are both available on the Galaxy S4, but then panorama, eraser. Panorama is available, eraser is not. That's a Galaxy S4 exclusive one. Rich tone is available, and then you get best face over here. And then continuous shot, best photo, beauty face. So you've got a lot of different options here, don't get me wrong. And you got best face and best photo on the Galaxy S4, but what you don't get also on the Galaxy Mega is animated photos. So keep that in mind as you're running through this. There are some camera differences between this device. That said, it's a huge camera, and you can obviously change right here the different effects and move back and forth between those. So that is a feature that's similar to the Galaxy S4, although you'll notice some differences here. You've got, for example, vintage, posterized, solarized, blue. You got a bunch of different options, but you don't see the live format here like you do on the Galaxy S4. Grayscale, for example, I'm not seeing a live image right there. So we'll bring over the HTC One to snap a picture, and check this out. That's what I did to the review note on the HTC One. I actually bent the metal, dropped it right on a piece of metal on the floor, and now the volume rocker doesn't work on this HTC One, but we'll use it for camera comparison purposes. 8 megapixel camera here, so in terms of, camera functionality, pretty similar to what we've seen not only on the Galaxy S3, so past Samsung devices, but also on the iPhone 5, and some of the others definitely can compare all around. So it's pretty easy to use, point and shoot as you would expect. You can focus in by tapping, and then I've got the ability to swap over to video camera. Super easy, and I just recorded. Boom, a video, and then I can switch to front facing. And I got a beard going on, check that out. Man, it's pretty wild and crazy, or cray-cray, as they say. I'll switch back without spoiling too much of the video. So all in all, camera, but again, keeping in mind differences between their flagship Galaxy S4 and the Mega. Now, obviously, you can use it in landscape mode as well, and you can see here's what it looks like, and I can move between my apps and my widgets, but overall, the functionality here is very similar to Samsung's devices. We'll go into phone here and take a look. Forgive me while I pull back here and make sure none of my numbers are popping up. You can see what the keypad looks like, and again, some screen real estate over here on the side because it's just such a big screen that it doesn't quite fit. And a quick run through the widgets here. We'll see all the stuff that we saw in the Galaxy S4, things like apps managers, alarms. You got the new version of the clock as well, which is actually one of my favorites, this new digital clock right here. Boom. And you can see it's right there on the home screen. One of my favorites. I like the way they revised the widgets in this version of TouchWiz. So briefing as well, dual clock, flipboard, all the stuff you would expect from Samsung, including some of their new widgets as well. So you've got S Travel over here, Story Album, all the goodies that you get, at least from a software standpoint, or most of the goodies you get, like Samsung apps, and an S Translator as well. So get this stuff from the Galaxy S4. They're migrating it over onto some of their other product lines, like the Galaxy Mega, and hopefully at some point the Galaxy Note, whatever the next iteration of that is as well. S Voice is also installed here, and as you can see, pressing and holding here brings up my task manager where I can access and see that I have my RAM. Now, last but not least, I'm going to show you the storage space. This could be an issue. There's a micro SD card in this device. And I have to give them props because they did a really good job with the placement of the micro SD card slot. It's right above the micro SIM card slot, making it super easy and saving space to boot. I mean, I'm really impressed by the overall look and feel of that and the fact that it's right there above. Kudos to Samsung on that. More people should do that all around. So let me close that battery door, and you can see right here more. Go into storage, and you can see total available storage. I don't have an SD card in this. 4.78 gigabytes. So you're getting about 4.8 gigabytes here of the 8 gigabytes of total storage available to you. So if you have more than a few pictures or more than a few songs, you might want to get a micro SD card. Overall, this is going to appeal to a very particular set of people. The Galaxy Note 2 is going to be great for a lot of people, and obviously if you're in the US, the Galaxy Note 2 or the Optimus G Pro are going to be the phablets you choose because they're subsidized and available on a carrier. That said, there's a lot to like here. I like the fact that they took the latest version of Android and TouchWiz and brought it over to this device. It does have a big display, and that's great for a lot of content creation and viewing of media. That said, this phone is huge. It barely fits in my pocket, as you can see by the Instagram picture on PhoneDog's Instagram feed. It's really a giant device. So weigh the pros and cons and determine what's best for you. That said, it's a decent device, and I would recommend it if you want a giant smartphone in your pocket. Keep it locked on PhoneDog.com for more on the Galaxy Mega. We'll have dogfights and more with this device. I'm on Twitter at PhoneDog_Aaron and on Facebook at Facebook.com/HiAaronBaker, and I would love to hear from you as to what you think about this device. So hit me up at one of those channels. Thanks for watching. Much more to come on PhoneDog.com with the Galaxy Mega. I'll see you next time.